This is an in-depth look and lesson for what you need to know how to play with a little help from my friend's drum track. To hear the full isolated cover, you can go to the Ably House Isolated, or the full cover is on the main page. So the beginning of this song, what's interesting to me is Ringo's use of a shuffle, his right hand. So he's doing something like this. So beginners at home, to learn the shuffle, first of all, Ringo is one of the masters of the shuffle. I call it the white man shuffle. He used his influences from the 50s and came up with his own technique, which is heavily borrowed from the Moeller technique. It's a technique involving your fingers and your wrist, as drums usually would. So at the beginning of the song, you'll hear timpani. Our isolated channel showcases how to play this song if you were playing it live with a band. But this in-depth look, I'll show you a little bit deeper to the recording. So, you want to do something like that. In the beginning of the song, here to slow down. You want to do a little pick-me-up, as I call it, with your three fingers. Pointer, your thumb, and your three fingers. Wrap them around the stick. Don't let your pinky hang around. Get it in there like a nice little cage. I practiced this for hours growing up, so don't expect to do it right away like Help or Act Naturally, which are examples of very fast shuffles. Beginning of the song, very tappity tap. Think jazz. What would you think? And in our isolated video, I mistakenly started with the kick drum. If you notice on the sound recording, the original sound recording, the kick drum does not come in until the chorus. So here's the basic beat of the verse, and then I'll show you the chorus and the differences. So the beginning, that's all you're doing. 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when the chorus comes in, you'll notice this goes away, and it goes just straight pattern. Let's add the kick drum. Here's the famous drum fill. It's one of the most known drum fills in pop recorded history. Goes something like this. Play it slow. There is no kick drum. Your hands are on the toms. The trick is with your right hand. This is how I play it. Ringo may have done something differently, but I highly doubt it. Ringo does, on the second verse, a little pick-me-up with the hats. Just his own little invention there. Very creative. I like to think of Ringo's drumming on this album as almost like an orchestra player. Seemingly was guided that way as well by the other members. Once in a while, I believe Ringo adds in a couple of extra little hits on the bass drum, as well as going to the ride cymbal. So he's like... So that's more along the lines of jazz shuffle. In the kick drum. You have to check out the isolated channel for the exact timing of that. So once you've mastered those techniques used and with a little help from my friends, I wanted to discuss some of the gear and other recording techniques they utilized for this track. And one of the major things people ask about is that tom sound. How do you get that tom sound? Well, the combination is a few things. Ringo used 13 and 16-inch toms. He took the bottom heads off, most likely to thank Jeff Emmerich for that. So this is what it kind of would have looked like, although this drum was made to have no bottom head. But so basically, Jeff Emmerich and Ringo decided to put a D19, AKG D19, up the bottom of the rack tom, and then the floor tom also had its bottom head removed, but it looks like they just had the microphone on top of the skin. That's a big reason, plus compression, EQ, the magic of Abbey Road. And some of the things I like to attest to its sound are the drum heads. Ludwig made tom-tom heads, 60s. They were very thin, and they wouldn't dent necessarily, and God knows what they were making these drum heads out of, but they sounded great. And I was able to use them for our isolated channel as well. The bass drum is interesting to me because it looks like in session photos Ringo placed his Comiskey Park 1966 jacket in between the skin and the pedal itself for some heavy muffling. That produced a dry attack, and sometimes Beatles would take off the front bass drum head, but it looks like in Sgt. Pepper they didn't really start doing that, or they went back and forth because they had been doing that since Rubber Soul. So the bottom heads off of the toms are a big reason for its sound, as well as people ask about the cymbals used. And for that track, I used 15-inch 602 Paiste from the 60s, but the major sound of the song is the 20-inch Zinn cymbal with rivets. That's the crash and the ride in the song, and if you can find one of those for cheap on eBay, I highly recommend it, but the rivets are a big help as well.